These people do not understand free speech at all. I mean, listen to Mike Pence. The First Amendment of the Constitution protects against government censorship of individuals. The First Amendment, though, does not protect entertainers who say crass or thoughtless things. The fuck yeah, it does.
So that was Bill Maher, and as you might have expected, during the most recent episode of Real Time with Bill Maher, Maher brutally called out Donald Trump, the MAGA movement, and the Republican Party writ large for its hypocrisy regarding cancel culture, following the Trump administration's orchestration of Jimmy Kimmel's indefinite suspension. Now, pretty much the entire episode was dedicated to this, from the opening monologue to most of the panel discussion with Alex Wagner of MSNBC, formerly of MSNBC, now of Pod Save America, and Joe Manchin, former Democrat turned independent senator. Maher is particularly furious about this, and I understand, because 20 years ago, Bill Maher's show, Politically Incorrect, was also canceled because he pissed off the then Republican president, George W. Bush, and we'll unpack all of that. But obviously, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. Let's finish the rest of the clip, and then we'll do some history with respect to Bill Maher and the disturbing parallels with Jimmy Kimmel.
Talking about, it's like, it doesn't protect crass or thoughtless things. Even England would not go for that.
Well, and Brendan Carr's been like going on podcasts in the time since Jimmy's been taken off the air, saying this is about political ideology. I mean, like, give me a break. This wasn't about whatever Jimmy Kimmel said on Monday. This is about silencing people who are critics of this administration.
But here's Pam Bondi. There's free speech, and then there's hate speech. No. Hate, that's the whole point.
So, of course, that's the other thing, too. It's not just the cancellation of Jimmy Kimmel. It's also the fact that, in the days prior to this, you had, Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, say one terrible, censorious thing after another, to the point that prominent conservatives and MAGA Republicans like Matt Walsh and Megyn Kelly were calling for her, not only openly insulting her, but many of them were calling for her to be fired. She first said that hate speech is something that should be criminalized and prosecuted if you direct hate speech at Charlie Kirk. Apparently, if that means if you insult Charlie Kirk, if you disagree with Charlie Kirk's legacy, that's potential hate speech. And then she went on Fox News and told Sean Hannity that if you work at an Office Depot, and Office Depot or some sort of printing business doesn't want to print images or pictures of Charlie Kirk for various vigils, that is prosecutable, right? So you remember a couple of years ago, the iconic Supreme Court case about whether a baker should be forced to bake a cake for a gay couple, right? Remember that iconic court case? And the right was like, no, you don't have the right to demand my service. And the Supreme Court ultimately sided with them. Well, it's not a cake, it's a flyer, but Pam Bondi is basically arguing for the reverse. Well, actually, no, when it comes to Charlie Kirk, you have to do whatever we want. You don't have the right to refuse service, and you need to do whatever we want. So that's what Bill Maher is talking about. And again, I'll say this, a lot of lack of principle on the conservative side at the moment, but we were seeing some high-profile backlash with respect to that. I want to play one more clip. Again, there's so many good ones in this episode with respect to Bill Maher's defense of free speech. I want to play this one here in which he references his cancellation, the cancellation of Politically Incorrect.
His FCC chair went out and channeled his best Goodfellas impression and said, we could do this the easy way or we could do this the hard way. I mean, without the accent.
What is the hard way, by the way?
The hard way, I guess, is, the FCC getting involved, but instead basically called the Sinclair and the affiliates out to make trouble, basically, for ABC, and ABC caved. ABC caved because ABC had caved before, because Bob Iger had already paid Trump effectively $15 million as an apology for something George Stephanopoulos said.
I want to stop right there and remind everybody about that. Remember, ABC has been capitulating to Trump all along the way. I think Bill Maher said, I want to say it was Bill Maher, maybe it was a different comedian who said that ABC stands for always be caving, which is pretty funny. But this is illustrating the idea that you can't appease Trump. Appeasement is not a viable strategy, because all that does is just provide an incentive for him to demand more and more and more and humiliate you more and more and more, because he feels he has leverage. George Stephanopoulos said that Donald Trump was convicted of rape or found liable for rape, which is not technically true. He was found liable for sexual abuse and defamation in the E. Jean Carroll case. It was a civil case, so there wasn't a conviction. It was not a criminal case. It was a civil case. Found liable for sexual abuse and defamation. But the presiding judge clarified in court documents, not just off the cuff, not just in court, but wrote it down on paper, because Trump's attorneys then basically went back to the judge about, whether or not it could be referred to as rape. And the judge was like, well, yes, he was found liable for sexual abuse and defamation, but what the jury found Trump did was effectively rape because he digitally penetrated E. Jean Carroll against her will, according to the jury. And the reason that was sexual abuse and not rape is because in the criminal sense, that requires genital penetration. So he'd have to have used his penis, not to get too graphic. So the judge was like, for all colloquial purposes, for the use of the common parlance, that particular word, it applies. And so all of that is to say that was George Stephanopoulos technically wrong? Yes. But it was not so egregious a misrepresentation, and there's no evidence, of course, that he did it maliciously, that most First Amendment attorneys were like, ABC would have won that case when Trump sued them. When Trump sued ABC and George Stephanopoulos, most First Amendment attorneys were like, oh, this is a slam dunk. Trump's going to lose this one. But ABC capitulated because Trump was about to become president again, and you don't want to piss off the most powerful man in the world, especially when you have potential corporate business before the federal government. So if any sort of mergers or major acquisitions, that'll have to be gone through the FCC and the Trump administration, perhaps the Justice Department, perhaps the FTC. These are all important things to consider. And so it was a very shrewd, cynical, short-term calculation, and it seems to be backfiring. And that's what Alex Wagner is referring to here. Let's play the rest of this.
These guys have decided that the spinelessness is their active stance.
It's funny, when they fired me, Ari Fleischer was asked in the press room about it, and he said, Americans need to watch what they say. And everybody was like, ooh, that's so quaint. But that was scandal, and everybody was like, oh, no, Ari Fleischer, that's too far. Americans don't need to watch what they say. And now
it's so much worse. It's so much worse. So Bill Maher, references this in his monologue, his cancellation, which some of you may or may not remember, depending on how old you are. This was like 2003, 2004. So let's take a look. Time magazine has a really good write-up about this. Jimmy Kimmel silencing echoes Bill Maher's after 9/11, but Trump is no Bush. During his inaugural address, Trump vowed to, quote, immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America. Grind ahead 8 months, and we have late-night jokesters caught up in a government gulag of autocratic opinion. First, CBS announced it was canceling Stephen Colbert's nightly roast from New York, nixing the entire Late Show franchise. Now, ABC has, quote, indefinitely suspended host Jimmy Kimmel for comments about the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. The reaction from the Trump administration was quick and intense. FCC Chairman Brandon Carr told a conservative podcaster that his agency could pursue action against ABC because of Kimmel's comments. Carr followed up on Fox News with a threat to pull broadcast licenses for station owners who are insufficiently MAGA. By Wednesday, Kimmel's bosses at ABC, owned by Disney, decided to yank him without a definite return date. He talks about how Trump took a victory lap. Trump has been testing the limits of his power during his second term with abandon. Trump landed millions in cash from ABC and CBS for lawsuits seen as garbage by First Amendment lawyers. Indeed. CBS agreed to change its interview presentations because Trump said editors protected 2024 Democratic candidate Kamala Harris, and he has sued newspapers for printing less than flattering accounts of his record. If all this feels a little familiar, it should. In fact, Kimmel's time slot on ABC freed up more than 20 years ago, soon after another host got canceled for not hewing to the accepted script, because Politically Incorrect was on ABC. So again, there's some disturbing similarities here. Bill Maher's cancellation is what created Jimmy Kimmel Live. And now it's almost like we've come full circle. Bill Maher's Politically Incorrect got targeted by advertisers and the White House itself in the wake of the September 11th terrorist attacks for criticizing U.S. foreign policy. Quote, we have been the cowards, lobbing cruise missiles from 2,000 miles away, Maher said. Quote, that's cowardly. Staying in the airplane when it hits the building, say what you want about it, it's not cowardly. Maher's remarks sparked a public backlash with White House Press Secretary Ari Fleischer, someone we've referenced actually in previous videos because he has since become a conservative commentator who frequents Fox News. But Ari Fleischer at the time was the White House press secretary, so he was basically Carolyn Levitt. I won't say Kellyanne Conway. Carolyn Levitt does right now, that was Ari Fleischer, one of the Bush administration press secretaries, alongside Dana Perino. Dana Perino of Fox News also became press secretary, so there was like a funnel, direct funnel between the White House under Republicans and Fox News. Anyway. At the time, Press Secretary Ari Fleischer said Americans, quote, need to watch what they say. But at no point did the Bush administration publicly threaten ABC's business. So what Trump is doing is even more egregious, is the point. In Kimmel's silencing, some in the MAGAverse see another win against the intolerant left. Trump's orbit is mixed mind victimization for political gain and rallied against so-called cancel culture, all the while leveraging it to punish anyone who doesn't match their pitch in their hymnals. And so it goes on like that, but it's a really compelling point. And this is why throughout this most recent episode of Real Time with Bill Maher, Maher is very sympathetic and empathetic for Jimmy Kimmel, who is apparently a close friend of Maher's himself. So again, some pretty disturbing parallels and a major escalation. What happened to Bill Maher at the time was a major scandal. I mean, obviously it was post 9/11, so like patriotic fervor was at its peak. But in the years afterwards, everyone was like, yeah, that was really fucked up. And it seems that we have not learned our lesson because the Trump administration is much more egregious and much more mobs-like than the Bush administration ever was. And that's not good. And again, note the similarities, not just comedians criticizing the administration, but note two Republican administrations. Democrats, for all their censorious instinct, I'm not going to sit here and say that the Democratic Party, that liberals and progressives don't at times want to punish people for their speech or make them incur some sort of reputational or social consequence. I'm not denying that. And you are free to criticize it because it's super annoying. But no Democratic administration has ever done anything like this. Nothing close. Once again, we are seeing the parallels are with Republican administrations who are uniquely censorious compared to Democrats. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.